My name is Marley Quinn Harper. I am 18 years old and I live in Wichita. Most people get a party for their 18th birthday. Some get a car. I got kicked out into the freezing cold with nothing but the clothes on my back. It happened in our kitchen in Wichita. It was a Tuesday night. My stepmom, Kimberly, put a $6 grocery store cake on the table. Then she slammed a stack of legal papers right next to it. She didn't smile. She didn't hug me. She just pointed at the dotted line. "Sign it," she screamed at me. "Sign it right now or get out forever." I refused. I knew she was trying to steal what my grandfather left me. I wouldn't let her win. 10 minutes later, I was standing on the sidewalk. The wind was -7 degrees. I heard the deadbolt lock behind me. That sound broke something inside me. I had one backpack and nowhere to go. I started walking toward the street corner. I saw the elderly homeless woman who always sat there. Usually I just smiled at her. But tonight, she grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight. She pulled me close and whispered words that terrified me. "Do not sleep where they expect you. Someone is coming." But before I tell you how everything flipped and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Marley Quinn Harper. I am 18 years old. The wind in Wichita doesn't just blow. It cuts. It feels like a knife against your skin, especially when you are wearing a thin coat and you have nowhere to go. I stood on that corner for a moment after the elderly woman released my arm. Her name was Mrs. Evelyn. I didn't know that then. I just knew her as the homeless woman I used to pass by when I had a warm car and a home. Now I was standing next to her, and in some ways she had more than I did. She had a spot. I had nothing. "Do not sleep where they expect you," she had whispered. Those words replayed in my mind like a broken record. Where did they expect me? Maybe a friend's house. Maybe the park near our subdivision. Maybe the bus station. My stepmother, Kimberly, was smart. She was cruel, but she was smart. If she wanted to hurt me, she would know where to look. I gripped the strap of my backpack tighter. My knuckles were white. I had my wallet in my pocket. I knew exactly how much was in there. $127. That was it. That was my entire life savings that I could access. Kimberly had frozen my junior checking account an hour before she kicked me out. This cash was from birthday money I had hidden in a shoebox. I started walking. I didn't walk toward my friends' houses. I didn't walk toward the nice part of town. I walked toward the highway. I knew there were cheap motels out there, the kind of places where people didn't ask questions and where nobody would look for a girl from a wealthy family. It took me 2 hours to walk there. My feet were numb. I couldn't feel my toes inside my boots. Every car that passed made me jump. I thought it might be my dad coming to save me. Then I thought it might be Kimberly coming to finish me off. But nobody stopped. I was just a shadow on the side of the road. I found a motel called the Western Inn. The W was flickering on the neon sign, buzzing like an angry fly. The parking lot was empty except for a rusted truck and a car with a flat tire. It looked abandoned. It looked perfect because it was invisible. I pushed open the door to the lobby. A bell chimed. It sounded loud in the quiet room. The man behind the counter didn't look up from his small TV. He was older, with a gray beard and a stained shirt. "I need a room," I said. My voice shook. I hated how weak I sounded. He looked up then. He looked at my coat. He looked at my backpack. He looked at my red face. $50 a night, he said. Cash up front, $10 deposit for the key. $60, that was almost half of everything I had. I hesitated. I thought about sleeping outside. But the wind was howling against the glass. It was 7 degrees below zero. If I slept outside, I might not wake up. I pulled out the cash. My hands were trembling so bad I dropped a $20 bill. The man watched me pick it up. He didn't offer to help. "Just one night," I said. He slid a key across the counter. Room 104. I walked outside and found the room. The door was heavy metal. I had to shoulder it open. The room smelled like old cigarettes and mildew. The carpet was sticky. There was one bed with a thin, brown blanket. I locked the door. Then I engaged the deadbolt. Then I took a wooden chair from the corner and wedged it under the doorknob. I had seen that in movies. It was the only protection I had. I sat on the edge of the bed. It was freezing in there. I went to the heater unit under the window and turned the dial. It clanked and groaned, but no heat came out. Just cold air. It was broken. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I felt like if I started crying, I would never stop. I just took off my backpack. I kept my coat on. I kept my boots on. I curled up on top of the brown blanket and pulled my knees to my chest. I stared at the door all night. Every time a car drove past on the highway, the headlights swept across the room, lighting up the peeling wallpaper. I held my breath every time, waiting for the door to rattle, waiting for Kimberly, waiting for my stepbrother Colton. I didn't sleep, I just survived the hours. When the sun came up, I felt stiff. My neck hurt. My stomach was growling, a hollow ache that made me feel sick. I had to leave. I couldn't afford another night. I checked out. The man gave me my $10 back without a word. I walked back toward the city. I had a plan now. I needed money. $67 wasn't going to last 2 days. I went back to the corner. I had to thank the woman. She had warned me. Mrs. Evelyn was there. She was sitting on a crate, wrapped in 3 different blankets. She had a cup in front of her. People were walking past her like she was invisible. They looked at their phones. They looked at the traffic lights. They never looked at her. I walked up to her. I stood there until she looked up. Her eyes were clear and sharp, surprisingly blue in her weathered face. "You're still here," she said. Her voice was scratchy. "I went to a motel," I said. "On the highway, nobody saw me." She nodded. "Good, you listen well." "That is rare." "Why did you tell me that?" I asked. "Why did you say someone is coming?" She looked left, then right. She motioned for me to lean closer. "I see things, girl. I sit here all day and all night. I see the cars. I see the people. I saw a car circling this block yesterday. A nice car, black SUV, a boy was driving. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking at the sidewalks. He was looking for you." My blood ran cold. Colton. My stepbrother drove a black SUV. "He is dangerous," Mrs. Evelyn said. "I can see it in the way he holds the wheel. You stay hidden." I nodded. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a $5 bill. It was a lot of money for me now, but she had saved me. "Thank you," I said. I put the money in her cup. She looked at the bill, then at me. "You need this more than I do." "No," I said firmly. "We're a team now." I left her and went to find work. I couldn't work anywhere that required a background check or a bank account. I didn't have those anymore. I needed cash. I walked into a quick-trip gas station 3 blocks away. It was busy. People were rushing in for coffee and donuts. The manager looked stressed. He was shouting at an employee who was slacking off. I waited until the line died down. I walked up to the counter. "I need a job," I said. "I can work nights. I can work weekends. I don't have a bank account, so I need cash daily. I'll work hard." The manager looked at me. He looked at my clean clothes, which were starting to look a little wrinkled. He looked at my desperation. "I can't pay you on the books without an ID and social security card," he muttered. "I have ID," I said, "but I need cash, please." He sighed. He looked around the store. "My night shift guy quit yesterday. Shift starts at 10 p.m. and goes to 6 a.m. It pays $10 an hour. Cash at the end of the shift. You stock shelves, you clean the bathrooms, you make the coffee. No sitting down." "I'll take it," I said. "Start tonight," he said. That became my life. For the next week, I was a ghost. During the day, I walked around the library or sat in the back of the bus to sleep for an hour. At night, I worked at the Quick Trip. It was hard work. My feet swelled up. My back ached from lifting boxes of soda syrup. I scrubbed toilets that were filthy. I mopped floors that were sticky with spilled energy drinks. I ate the food they were going to throw away. At 4 a.m., they threw out the old donuts and hot dogs. I asked the manager if I could have them. He shrugged. Trash is trash. So I ate stale donuts and cold hot dogs. It wasn't healthy, but it filled the hole in my stomach. Every morning at 6 a.m., I got my $80. It felt like a fortune. And every morning, on my way to find a place to rest, I stopped by Mrs. Evelyn's corner. I would drop $5, sometimes 10, into her cup. "Eat something warm," I would tell her. She would just nod and watch me. "Keep your eyes open, Marley," she would say. "They haven't stopped looking." I thought I was safe. I was invisible. I was just a girl working at a gas station. But I was wrong. Survival makes you notice things you never noticed before. You notice which benches have wind cover. You notice which public bathrooms have hot water. You notice which security guards sleep on the job. I had been homeless for 2 weeks. I had a routine. I worked all night. In the mornings, I slept. Since I couldn't afford the motel every single night, I found a spot in Riverside Park. It was a secluded area behind the old tennis courts. There was a thick row of bushes and a wooden bench that was hidden from the main path. It was quiet there. The sun hit that bench around 9 a.m., and it provided a little bit of warmth. I would curl up with my backpack as a pillow and sleep for 4 hours. It was my sanctuary. One Tuesday morning, I finished my shift at the Quick Trip. I was exhausted. My eyes burned from the fluorescent lights. I had $80 in my pocket, but I was saving it. I wanted to have enough for an apartment deposit one day. I walked to the park. The air was crisp and cold, but the sky was blue. I was looking forward to closing my eyes. As I got closer to the tennis courts, I smelled something. It was a sharp, chemical smell. Acrid, like burning rubber and gasoline. I walked faster. My heart started to beat a little harder. When I rounded the corner of the bushes, I stopped. I dropped my backpack. There was yellow police tape stretched across the gap between the trees. My bench was gone. Well, it wasn't gone. It was a blackened skeleton. The wood was charred into chunks of coal. The metal frame was twisted from heat. The bushes behind it, the ones that hid me from view, were burned away, leaving just black sticks poking out of the muddy ground. I stood there, frozen. A police officer was standing near the tape, writing on a notepad. He looked bored. I took a step back, trying to stay hidden, but I stepped on a dry twig. Snap, the officer looked up. "Area is closed, miss," he called out. "Vandalism." I couldn't move. I stared at the black spot where I usually laid my head. If I hadn't picked up an extra hour at work to help clean the coolers, I would have been on that bench. "What happened?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. The officer shrugged. He walked over to the tape. "Some kids, probably, arson. Looks like they poured gasoline all over this bench and the one over by the pond. Lit it up about 2 hours ago." "Gasoline?" I asked. "Yeah. Fire department found melted plastic bottles stuffed with rags." "Accelerant?" He shook his head. "Mean prank. Could have started a wildfire if the ground wasn't so wet." It wasn't a prank. I looked at the bench again. It was completely incinerated. Whoever did this didn't just want to burn a bench. They wanted to burn what was on the bench. Me. My legs felt like jelly. I turned around and walked away. I tried to walk normally, but as soon as I was out of the officer's sight, I started to run. I ran until my chest burned. I ran until I was back in the city center, surrounded by people. I found a reflection of myself in a shop window. I looked terrified. I looked like a hunted animal. I sat down on a curb and put my head in my hands. It was Kimberly. It had to be. I remembered the argument before I left. The trust fund. My grandfather, who died 6 months ago, had left me a trust fund. It was supposed to unlock when I turned 18. Kimberly, my stepmother, had been furious when the will was read. She thought the money should go to my father, and by extension, to her and her son, Colton. She had tried to force me to sign a document transferring the rights to the trust to her. She called it a management agreement. I knew it was theft. When I refused, she kicked me out. But this was different. Kicking me out was cruel. Burning my sleeping spot with gasoline was murder. How did they know? How did they know I slept behind the tennis courts? I had been so careful, I never told anyone. I walked different routes. Paranoia clawed at my throat. Was I being followed? Right now, I looked at the cars passing by. Every black SUV made me flinch. Every person on a phone looked suspicious. I realized then that the homeless life I was building wasn't just hard, it was a death trap. I wasn't just a girl down on her luck. I was a target. I needed to talk to Mrs. Evelyn. She was the only person in the world who seemed to know what was going on. She had warned me about the danger. She knew about the boy in the car. I waited until nightfall. I didn't sleep that day. I stayed in the public library, sitting in a corner where I could see the door. I held a book open, but I didn't read a single word. I just watched the door. When the sun went down, I went back to the corner. Mrs. Evelyn was there. She looked agitated. Usually she sat still as a statue. Tonight she was shifting on her crate. She was looking around nervously. When she saw me approaching, she didn't smile. She waved me over urgently. "You're late," she hissed. I was at the library," I said. "Mrs. Evelyn, something happened. The park." "I know about the park," she interrupted. Her voice was sharp. "I heard the sirens. I saw the smoke." She grabbed my hand. Her skin was rough, like sandpaper. "They are getting impatient, Marley. They are getting sloppy, but sloppy makes them dangerous." "How did they know I was there?" I asked, tears stinging my eyes. "I didn't tell anyone." Mrs. Evelyn looked at me with pity. "You are 18. You are a child. You think you are invisible because you feel invisible, but you are not invisible to a predator." She reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out something small and black. "We don't have much time," she said. "Listen to me carefully." Mrs. Evelyn looked smaller tonight. The cold seemed to be sinking into her bones, but her eyes were burning with an intensity that scared me. "What do you mean?" I asked. "What is going on?" She pulled me down so I was crouching next to her crate. We were eye level. The smell of exhaust fumes and old coffee surrounded us. I told you I saw a boy circling, she said. He has expensive sneakers. White ones with red stripes. Very clean, he doesn't look like he belongs here. Colton, I whispered, he loves those shoes. He has been watching you, she said. Not just driving by, he has been on foot. He follows you when you leave the gas station in the morning. He keeps his distance, but he is there. He watches where you go, he watches where you sleep. I felt sick. The idea of Colton, my arrogant, cruel stepbrother, stalking me through the streets while I was vulnerable and tired, it made my skin crawl. Why didn't you tell me he was following me? I asked. I wasn't sure at first, she said. I thought maybe he was just a curious kid, but then I saw the phone. He is always on the phone, reporting, taking pictures. She paused and looked around again. The street was empty for a moment. 2 nights ago, I saw him talking to another boy. They were parked down the street. They were taking things out of the trunk. Red cans. My breath hitched. Gas cans. Yes, she said. I knew then. They were planning something bad. I couldn't leave my spot. I can't walk very well these days, but I could watch. She opened her hand. In her palm sat a small, silver USB drive. It looked brand new. What is this? I asked. I have a friend, Mrs. Evelyn said. He works at the pawn shop down on 4th Street. He owes me a favor from a long time ago. I asked him for a camera. A solar-powered hunting camera, the kind people use to watch deer in the woods. I stared at her. This homeless woman who people stepped over every day was smarter than all of them combined. I put it up, she said. There is a lamppost near the entrance of the park, the one with the broken light. Nobody looks up there. I climbed up on a dumpster and zip-tied it there 2 nights ago. She pressed the USB drive into my hand. It was cold metal. I went back today and took the card out. My friend at the shop put the video on this drive for me. She gripped my hand tight. I haven't seen it, she said, but I know what it captured. You need to see it. And then you need to decide what to do. Watch it alone, she commanded. Do not trust anyone, not the police yet, not your friends. Watch it first. I nodded. I put the USB drive in my pocket. It felt heavy, like a stone. Go, she said. Go to your motel. Do not sleep outside tonight. I stood up. I don't have enough for the motel and food. Starve tonight, she said grimly. Better hungry than dead. She was right. I walked to the Western Inn again. I paid the man. I didn't care about the cost this time. I needed a door with a lock. I got into room 108 this time. It was identical to the last one. Cold, smelly, sad. I didn't just lock the door. I dragged the heavy wooden dresser from the wall. It scraped loudly against the floor. I pushed it all the way until it was jammed against the door. If anyone wanted to get in, they would have to break the door down and push the dresser over. I sat on the bed. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely unzip my backpack. I had my old laptop. It was 3 years old, cracked in the corner, and the battery barely held a charge. Kimberly hadn't let me take it, but I had snatched it from the counter before I ran out the door that first night. I was glad I did. I plugged the laptop into the wall. It hummed to life. The screen glowed blue in the dark room. I held the USB drive. I was terrified of what was on it, but I had to know. I plugged it in. A folder popped up on the screen. There was one video file. It was dated yesterday morning, 3:42 a.m. I took a deep breath. I hovered the mouse over the file. Please, I whispered to nobody, please let this be a mistake. I clicked play. The video opened. It was grainy and black and white, typical night vision footage, but the picture was clear enough. The camera was angled down from the lamppost. It showed the entrance to the park and the path leading toward the tennis courts. At first, there was nothing, just the wind blowing the branches of the trees. A stray cat ran across the screen. Then, at the 0:15 mark, movement. 2 figures walked into the frame. They were wearing dark hoodies with the hoods pulled up. But I recognized the walk immediately. The swagger. The way he swung his arms, it was Colton. The second figure was shorter. I recognized him too. It was Tyler, Colton's best friend. He was a follower. He did whatever Colton told him to do. They were carrying heavy red plastic cans. Gas cans. They stopped right under the camera, not knowing it was there. Colton pulled his phone out of his pocket. The light from the screen illuminated his face. I hit the pause button. There he was, my stepbrother. He was smiling. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a cruel, excited smile. He looked like he was playing a video game. I felt tears running down my cheeks. We grew up in the same house for 6 years. We ate dinner at the same table. I helped him with his math homework. And now, here he was, carrying gasoline to burn me alive. I pressed play again. The audio on the camera was faint, mostly wind noise, but then the wind died down for a second and I heard them speak. "Are you sure she's back there?" Tyler asked. He sounded nervous. He kept looking over his shoulder. "Yeah," Colton said. His voice was clear. "I tracked her yesterday. She curls up behind the courts like a rat." "Man, I don't know," Tyler said. "What if she wakes up? What if we, hurt her?" Colton laughed. It was a low, chilling sound. "That's the point, idiot. If she disappears before Friday, the money goes to my dad. No second chances." I gasped. I covered my mouth with my hand to stop a scream. Friday. My birthday was last Tuesday. The trust fund had a clause. I had to claim it within 10 days of turning 18, or it would go into a holding status where my father, as the secondary trustee, could petition to control it. Friday was the deadline. They weren't just trying to scare me away. They were trying to eliminate the claimant. If I was dead, or in the hospital, or just missing, they could file the paperwork and take the money. "Do it fast," Colton said on the video. "Pour it on the bench, pour it on the bushes. Light it and run." "What about the text?" Tyler asked. "Did your mom reply?" Colton looked at his phone again. He turned the screen toward Tyler. The camera caught the glow of the screen perfectly. It was blurry, but I could read the bubble. It was from Mom, Kimberly. The text read, "Do it fast and clean. No mistakes this time. No mistakes this time." That meant kicking me out wasn't enough. That meant the emotional abuse wasn't enough. She wanted me gone. Permanently. I watched as they walked out of frame toward the tennis courts. 2 minutes later, a bright flash lit up the screen. The fire. Then the two figures came running back. They were sprinting. They didn't have the gas cans anymore. They were laughing. Colton stopped for a second to tie his shoe, those white sneakers Mrs. Evelyn had seen. He looked back at the orange glow reflecting off the trees. "Bye-bye, Marley," he said. Then he ran off into the dark. The video ended. I sat in the dark motel room. The silence was deafening. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt my ribs. I felt sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up into the toilet. I washed my face with cold water. I looked at myself in the dirty mirror. My eyes were red. My skin was pale, but something had changed in my eyes. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard rage. They wanted to kill me for money. They wanted to burn me like trash. My father's wife, my stepbrother. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a witness, and I had the evidence that was going to bury them. I walked back to the laptop. I ejected the USB drive and put it in my bra, right against my skin. I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who wasn't afraid of Kimberly and her lawyers. I reached for the motel phone. I dialed the only number I knew by heart. "Lauren," I said when she picked up. "Marley, oh my God, where are you? I've been calling you for days." Lauren was crying. "I'm okay," I said. My voice was steady. "But I need you to come get me, right now." And Lauren, "Yeah, bring your dad's lawyer card. We're going to the police." I sat on the edge of the bed in room 108, staring at the phone in my hand. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I had just hung up with Lauren. She was coming. For the next 20 minutes, I didn't move. I couldn't. I kept imagining the door bursting open. I imagined Colton and his friend Tyler kicking through the cheap wood, smelling of gasoline. Every time a car drove past the motel window, casting long, sweeping shadows across the peeling wallpaper, I flinched. I had the dresser shoved against the door, but it felt like nothing. It felt like a toothpick against a hurricane. I kept the USB drive pressed against my skin, hidden inside my bra. It was hard and cold, a constant reminder of the reality I was living in. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a family dispute. This was attempted murder. My stepmother and stepbrother had tried to burn me alive while I slept. The realization made me feel heavy, like my blood had turned to lead. When I finally saw headlights flash 3 times outside the window, our old code, I scrambled up. I peeked through the curtain. It was Lauren's beat-up Honda Civic. I had never been so happy to see a rusty car in my life. I pushed the dresser away. It scraped loudly on the floor, a screeching sound that made me cringe. I grabbed my backpack. I grabbed my laptop. I didn't look back at the room. I ran out into the freezing night air and dove into the passenger seat of Lauren's car. Lauren didn't say a word at first. She just grabbed my face with both hands and looked at me. Her eyes were wide and filled with tears. "You look," she started, but she choked on the words. "I know," I said. I look like I've been living on the street because I have. I have the card, she said, her voice trembling. She handed me a business card. It was for a criminal defense attorney her dad knew. But we aren't going to a lawyer first. We're going to the cops, right? Yes, I said. Drive. Just drive. The drive to the Wichita Police Department felt like it took hours. I kept checking the side mirror. Every pair of headlights behind us looked like a black SUV. Paranoia is a powerful poison. It makes you doubt everything. Did you watch it? Lauren asked quietly as we turned onto the main avenue. Yes, I said. My voice was flat. It's them. It's Colton. And Kimberly ordered it. Lauren gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. They are going to rot, Marley. I swear to God, they are going to rot. We parked in front of the station. It was a brick building that looked tired and imposing under the streetlights. We walked in. The lobby was bright, too bright. It smelled like floor wax and stale coffee. There was a glass partition with a heavy metal speaking grate. A desk sergeant looked up. He looked bored. He had probably seen everything tonight, drunks, fights, noise complaints. Help you? He asked. I need to report a crime, I said. Attempted murder. That got his attention. He straightened up. That's a serious accusation, miss. I have proof, I said. I have video. 10 minutes later, we were in a small interview room. It was gray and windowless. There was a metal table and 3 chairs. I sat there, shivering, even though it was warm inside. The door opened and a man walked in. He was tall, with dark hair and tired eyes. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He had a badge on his belt and a gun holster. I'm Detective Anthony Morales, he said. He had a calm, low voice. He sat down opposite me. The sergeant says you have something to show me. I didn't trust him yet. I didn't trust anyone, but I looked at his face. He didn't look dismissive. He looked focused. I opened my laptop. I plugged in the USB drive. I turned the screen toward him. This was taken 2 nights ago, I said. At Riverside Park, where I sleep. I hit play. The room was silent except for the hum of the laptop fan. I watched Morales's face. At first, his expression was neutral. He was watching a grainy video of 2 kids. Then he saw the gas cans. His eyebrows pulled together. Then he heard the audio. If she disappears before Friday, the money goes to my dad. Morales leaned in closer. He wasn't blinking. Then came the text message on the screen. Do it fast and clean. When the video ended with the fire flaring up, Morales sat back in his chair. He let out a long breath. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. He didn't see a homeless teenager anymore. He saw a victim of a calculated plot. Do you know who these men are? He asked. His voice was different now. Sharper, tougher. The one with the phone is Colton Brooks, I said. My stepbrother, the other one is Tyler. I don't know his last name, but they go to school together. And the text? From Mom, I said. That's Kimberly Brooks, my stepmother. Morales stood up. Stay here, do not leave this room. I mean it, you are not safe out there. He walked out. Through the open door, I heard the energy in the station change. I heard him shouting orders. I need a warrant, now, get a judge on the phone. I don't care what time it is. We have conspiracy, arson, and attempted murder. Lauren reached across the table and held my hand. It's happening, Marley, it's really happening. For the next 4 hours, the station was a blur of activity. I gave a formal statement. I told them everything. The trust fund, the eviction, the threats, the nights sleeping in the cold. Morales came back in around 4 a.m. He looked energized. We have the warrants, he said. We picked up Tyler at his house 20 minutes ago. He cracked before we even got him in the car. He was terrified. He confirmed everything. He identified Colton and your stepmother. What about them? I asked. We have units headed to your father's house right now, Morales said. We're bringing them in. I felt a wave of dizziness. My father's house. The house I grew up in. Police were kicking down the door right now. Can I see? I asked. I don't want to go there, but I need to know they are caught. Morales shook his head. I can't take you to the scene, it's too dangerous, but you can wait here. I waited. An hour later, Morales returned. He looked satisfied. Colton tried to run, he said grimly. Tried to go out the back door when he saw the lights. We tackled him in the yard, he's in custody. And Kimberly, she was screaming, Morales said. She demanded to speak to her lawyer. She denied everything, but we have her phone, Marley. We have the text history, she didn't delete it, arrogance. Is she in jail? I asked. She's being processed now, he said. But, he hesitated. But what? She has money, Morales said. And she has a clean record. Her lawyer is already here. There is a very high chance she will make bail this morning. The judge might release her with conditions until the trial. My heart sank. She'll come for me. She will have an ankle monitor, Morales said. And a strict no-contact order. If she comes within 500 feet of you, she goes back to jail instantly. We are going to protect you, Marley. I nodded, but I didn't feel safe. An ankle monitor was just a piece of plastic. It couldn't stop a bullet. It couldn't stop a fire. Lauren drove me back to her apartment that morning. I couldn't go back to the motel. I slept on her couch, but I kept waking up, gasping for air, smelling smoke that wasn't there. The war wasn't over. I had won the first battle, but Kimberly was free. And a caged animal is always the most dangerous kind. 3 days passed. 3 days of looking over my shoulder. Kimberly had made bail. It was set at $500,000, and she posted it within 2 hours. She was out. I was staying at Lauren's apartment, but I felt like a burden. Lauren was great, but her apartment was small, and I could tell she was nervous. Every time the buzzer rang, we both jumped. On the 4th day, I had to go out. I had a meeting with the trust officer. The deadline was tomorrow. If I didn't sign the papers by 5 p.m. on Friday, everything I had fought for would be gone. I borrowed Lauren's car. I drove to the bank downtown. It was a glass skyscraper. I felt small walking into the lobby in my thrift store clothes. That's when I saw him. He was sitting in a gray sedan across the street, a man in his 40s, balding, sunglasses. He was holding a camera with a long lens. I stopped. He didn't look away. He raised the camera and snapped a picture of me. My skin crawled. It wasn't the police. Police don't hide like that. It wasn't Colton. He was in juvenile detention. It was a private investigator. Kimberly couldn't come near me because of the restraining order, so she had hired eyes. She was watching me. She wanted to know where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing. I hurried inside the building. I took the elevator to the 40th floor. Mr. Henderson, the trust officer, was a kind, older man. He looked relieved to see me. Marley, he said, we were worried. Your stepmother called us. She tried to claim you were mentally incompetent. She tried to stop this meeting. She tried to kill me, I said bluntly. Mr. Henderson's face fell. I read the news. I am so sorry. He laid the papers out on the mahogany table. This is it, he said. The trust your grandfather set up. $1.4 million. It releases to you upon your signature. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking. This was the money that had caused all this pain. This was the reason I had almost burned to death. I hated it, but I needed it. It was my shield. It was my future. I signed my name, Marley Quinn Harper. It is done, Mr. Henderson said. The funds are yours. You are safe now, financially at least. I left the office with a cashier's check for $10,000 in my pocket, just for immediate expenses, and a debit card linked to the main account. I was a millionaire. But as I walked back to the car, I didn't feel rich. I felt hunted. The gray sedan was still there. The man watched me pull out. He started his engine. He followed me. I drove aimlessly for a while. I didn't want to lead him back to Lauren's place. I didn't want Kimberly to know where my friend lived. I drove toward the highway. The gray sedan stayed 3 cars back. Professional. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered it on speaker. Hello, Marley. The voice was ice cold. It wasn't Kimberly. It was a man's voice. Rough. Who is this? I demanded. Check your rearview mirror, the voice said. I'm the guy in the Suburban. I looked. Behind the gray sedan, a massive black Chevrolet Suburban was speeding up. It swerved around the sedan and roared up behind me. It was huge. It filled my entire rear window. Pull over, the voice said. Now, I'm calling the police, I shouted. If you call the police, your friend Lauren gets a visit tonight, the voice said calmly. Pull over, I have a message from your stepmother. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced my chest. Lauren. They knew about Lauren. I pulled onto the shoulder of the empty access road. My hands were slick with sweat. The Suburban pulled in front of me, blocking me in. A man got out. He was huge. He wore a black suit. He walked to my window. He tapped on the glass. I rolled it down an inch. He held out a phone. Listen. He put the phone on speaker and held it to the crack in the window. Marley. It was her, Kimberly. Her voice sounded strained, high-pitched, like a violin string about to snap. You think you won? She hissed. You think because you signed some papers and talked to the police you're safe. Leave me alone, Kimberly, I said. It's over. It is over when I say it is over, she screamed. The distortion of the phone made it sound demonic. Drop the charges. Tell the DA you lied. Tell them you made the video up. If you don't, I will spend every penny I have to ruin you, And I won't miss next time. Drop the charges or you won't live to spend that money. The line went dead. The man took the phone back. He looked at me. You heard the lady. He walked back to his truck. I sat there, frozen. The threat was real. She was desperate. She was losing control, and that made her lethal. But she had made a mistake. She thought I was the same scared little girl she kicked out of the kitchen. She thought I would crumble. I looked at my phone. I had been on a call the entire time. I hadn't hung up on the unknown number. But before I answered that, I had speed-dialed Detective Morales. I had kept him on the line in the background. I picked up my phone. "Detective, did you get that?" Morales's voice came through, loud and urgent. "I heard every word, Marley. We have a trace on the Suburban. We are 2 miles out. Stay put." I looked up. The Suburban was peeling away, kicking up gravel. Suddenly, blue and red lights flooded the horizon. 3 police cruisers came screaming over the hill, moving faster than I had ever seen cars move. The Suburban tried to swerve onto the grass to escape, but a cruiser rammed its back bumper. The SUV spun out, sliding sideways into a ditch. Police officers swarmed the vehicle with guns drawn. "Get out! Hands where we can see them!" I watched as the big man in the suit was dragged out of the driver's seat. He was handcuffed and thrown onto the hood of a cruiser. I stepped out of my car. My legs were weak, but I forced myself to stand tall. Detective Morales pulled up a minute later. He ran over to me. "Are you hurt?" "No," I said. "I'm fine." He looked at the man in handcuffs. "That's a hired heavy, ex-security. We've dealt with him before." "He had Kimberly on the phone," I said. "She threatened to kill me. She threatened my friend." Morales nodded grimly. "That violates her bail conditions. And with the recording of that call, that's witness intimidation. That's a felony." He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, revoke bail for Kimberly Brooks. Send a unit to her residence immediately. Proceed with caution. Subject is desperate." He looked at me. "She's done, Marley. She just dug her own grave." I watched the man being shoved into the back of a police car. "She wanted me to be scared," I whispered. "Are you?" Morales asked. I thought about the cold nights, the fire, the fear. "No," I said. "I'm not scared anymore. I'm just ready for this to end." The courthouse was a fortress of stone and glass. It was designed to make you feel small, to remind you of the power of the law. I walked up the steps with Detective Morales on one side and a victim's advocate on the other. It had been 3 months since the arrest. Kimberly had been in jail the whole time. After the roadside incident, the judge had revoked her bail immediately. She had spent the last 90 days in a cell awaiting trial. Colton was in a juvenile detention center. Today was the sentencing hearing. They had both taken plea deals. The evidence was too overwhelming. The video, the texts, the phone call witness intimidation, their lawyers knew they couldn't win a trial. They pleaded guilty to avoid the maximum sentences. I walked into the courtroom. It was packed. People love a scandal, especially one involving a wealthy family. I saw reporters in the back row. I ignored them. I took my seat in the front row. First, they brought Colton in. He looked different. He wasn't the arrogant boy with the expensive sneakers anymore. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was too big for him. His head was shaved. He looked smaller, younger. He didn't look at me. He stared at the floor. The judge was a stern woman with glasses. She looked at Colton with disappointment. "Colton Brooks," she said, "you are 17 years old. You conspired to kill your stepsister for financial gain. You set a fire that could have killed anyone in that park." Colton mumbled something I couldn't hear. "Speak up," the judge commanded. "I'm sorry," he said, but it sounded hollow. He was sorry he got caught. The judge sighed. "You will serve 5 years in the juvenile justice facility. Upon your 21st birthday, you will be transferred to adult prison to serve the remainder of your sentence. You threw your life away for money that wasn't yours." As the bailiffs led him away, he finally looked at me. There was no anger in his eyes anymore, just fear. He was a boy who had followed his mother's orders off a cliff. Then they brought Kimberly in. She looked terrible. Her hair, usually dyed a perfect blonde, was showing gray roots. Her face was gaunt. She wore the same orange jumpsuit, but she wore it with defiance. She walked with her chin up. She glared at the prosecutor. She glared at the judge. And then she saw me. Her eyes narrowed into slits. If looks could kill, I would have dropped dead right there on the bench. She hated me. She hated me because I survived. Her lawyer tried to speak for her. He talked about stress. He talked about her being a protective mother. It was garbage. The judge wasn't buying it. "Mrs. Brooks," the judge said. This is one of the most cold-blooded schemes I have seen in 20 years on the bench. You manipulated your teenage son into becoming an arsonist. You targeted a vulnerable young woman who you had already victimized by rendering her homeless. You are a danger to society. I was protecting my family's future, Kimberly shouted. Her lawyer tried to shush her, but she pulled away. That money belonged to us. We built that life. The money belonged to Marley Harper, the judge said coldly. And now you have nothing. 7 years, the judge announced. State penitentiary, no possibility of parole for the first 5. Kimberly screamed as the bailiffs grabbed her arms. It was a primal, ugly sound. This isn't fair. I have rights, they dragged her out. The heavy wooden doors slammed shut, cutting off her screams. Silence fell over the courtroom. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for months. It was over. They were gone. I stood up to leave. Marley, I froze. I knew that voice. I turned around. Standing near the back of the courtroom was my father. I hadn't seen him since the day I was kicked out. He looked old. He had lost weight. His suit was wrinkled. He was holding his hat in his hands. He walked toward me. Detective Morales stepped in front of me, blocking his path, but I put a hand on Morales's arm. It's okay, I said. My father stopped a few feet away. He looked at me with watery eyes. Marley, he said, I didn't know. You have to believe me. I didn't know they were going to hurt you. You knew they kicked me out, I said. My voice was steady. You sat at the table and ate your dinner while I was walking into a blizzard. You knew that. He looked down. Kimberly, she has a way of twisting things. She told me it was for the best. She said you needed tough love. Tough love isn't leaving your daughter to freeze, I said. Tough love isn't gasoline. I know, he stammered. I was weak. I should have stood up to her. But I'm here now, Marley. They're gone. It's just us. We're family. He took a step closer. I lost the house, Kimberly's legal fees. They took everything. I'm staying at a motel right now. Funny, right? He gave a weak, pathetic smile. He was fishing. He knew I had the trust fund. He knew I was a millionaire. He was trying to bond with me over being broke, hoping I would save him. I looked at this man. He was my father. He had raised me. But when it mattered, when I was in the most danger of my life, he chose silence. He chose his wife over his daughter. We aren't family, I said. He looked shocked. Marley, don't say that. I'm your dad. No, I said. My dad would have come looking for me. My dad would have slept in that car until he found me. You aren't my dad. You're just a man who lost his meal ticket. I reached into my purse. I pulled out a $20 bill. Here, I said. I held it out to him. He stared at it. What is this? Buy yourself some dinner, I said. And don't contact me again. I dropped the bill on the bench next to him. I turned around and walked out of the courtroom. I didn't look back. I heard him calling my name, but his voice sounded distant, like a ghost fading away. I walked out into the hallway. Lauren was there. Mrs. Evelyn was there, sitting in a wheelchair I had bought for her. They were smiling. Ready to go home? Lauren asked. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. I had lost the family I was born into. But looking at Lauren and Mrs. Evelyn, I realized I hadn't lost anything important. I had just cleared out the weeds so the real garden could grow. There was one final loose end. It was the money. A week after the sentencing, I was back in Mr. Henderson's office. The room smelled like expensive leather and old paper. The city looked small from the 40th floor. It looked like a toy set. My father was there too. He had been summoned by the legal team. He sat in the corner, looking small and defeated. He still thought there was a chance. He thought that because I was his daughter, and because Kimberly was in prison, he might still get access to the family assets or the trust management. He was still hoping for a crumb. Mr. Henderson opened a thick file. He adjusted his glasses. There is a matter of the secondary clause in your grandfather's trust, Mr. Henderson said. He looked at my father. A clause that was never revealed because it was only relevant if Marley failed to claim the money or passed away. My father perked up. Right. If she hadn't claimed it, it would have reverted to me. As the guardian. Mr. Henderson shook his head slowly. No, Mr. Harper. That is what you and your wife assumed. That is what Kimberly read in the draft will 5 years ago. But your father, Marley's grandfather, changed it 2 weeks before he died. He didn't trust Kimberly. And frankly, he was worried about your passivity. Mr. Henderson slid a document across the table. Read clause 4 billion, he said. My father picked it up. His hands were shaking. He read it silently. His face went pale, then it went gray. I don't understand, he whispered. It says, Mr. Henderson read aloud, his voice clear and sharp, that in the event of Marley Harper's death, incapacitation, or failure to claim the trust, 100% of the assets shall bypass the parents and be liquidated immediately. The proceeds are to be donated to the Wichita Youth Shelter and the Kansas State Scholarship Fund for at-risk youth. The room went dead silent. I stared at the lawyer. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a laugh of pure disbelief. "You mean," I started. "I mean," Mr. Henderson said, looking at my father with cold eyes, "that even if their plan had worked, even if they had killed you in that park, they would have received $0, nothing, not a single cent." My father dropped the paper. He put his head in his hands. Kimberly had destroyed our family for nothing. She had driven a wedge between us, committed arson, and ruined her son's life, all chasing a pot of gold that never existed for her. If she had succeeded, she would have been standing over my grave with empty pockets. "The greed blinded her," Mr. Henderson said, "and it blinded you, sir." My father stood up. He looked like a ghost. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. The shame was too heavy. He walked out of the office without a word. That was the last time I saw him. The fallout happened fast after that. Since Kimberly was convicted of a felony attempted murder, she was legally barred from receiving any benefits from the family estate. My father was liable for her legal debts because he had co-signed for her defense team. The bank foreclosed on the house. I drove by it one last time before the auction. The for sale sign was stuck in the lawn where I used to play tag. The windows were dark. It didn't look like a home anymore. It looked like a crime scene. I watched from my car as the sheriff's deputies carried out boxes. I saw the dining room table where Kimberly had slammed the papers down. I saw the lamp from the living room. It was just stuff. That's all it was. Wood and fabric. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. The auction was held on the courthouse steps. The house sold for a fraction of what it was worth to a developer who planned to tear it down and build condos. My father walked away with nothing but his old pickup truck and a suitcase of clothes. He moved 2 towns over to live in a rented room above a garage. He got a job stocking shelves at a hardware store. Justice wasn't just about prison time. It was about stripping away the illusion. Kimberly and my father cared about status more than anything. They cared about looking rich. They cared about the country club and the nice cars. Now, Kimberly was wearing a state-issued uniform and scrubbing floors in the prison cafeteria. Colton was in a cell, learning the hard way that following the wrong leader leads to a dead end. And I was free. Mr. Henderson handed me the final accounting. "You are fully liquid, Marley," he said. "The house proceeds paid off the debts. The trust is untouched. You have $1.4 million free and clear. What do you want to do?" I looked at the check. It was a lot of zeros. It was enough money to buy a mansion. It was enough money to travel the world. But I didn't want a mansion. I didn't want to run away. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. "I have some people to take care of," I said. "Money doesn't buy happiness. I know people say that. But they are wrong. Money buys safety. Money buys warmth. Money buys the ability to fix things that are broken." The first thing I did was go to the corner. Mrs. Evelyn was there. It was raining. She was huddled under a plastic tarp, shivering. The damp cold of Kansas in March is miserable. I pulled my new car, a sensible, safe SUV with heated seats, up to the curb. I got out. I didn't care about the rain ruining my hair. "Mrs. Evelyn," I said. She looked up. Her eyes were tired. "Marley, you look good. You look clean." "Pack your things," I said. She frowned. "What, is the police moving us?" "No," I said. "I'm moving you." I helped her stand up. She was frail. I gathered her blankets. I gathered her few precious items. A photo of her husband who died 20 years ago, her Bible, her solar radio. "Where are we going?" she asked as I helped her into the passenger seat. She touched the leather dashboard with awe. "Somewhere warm," I said. I drove her to the gardens. It was the best assisted living facility in Wichita. It wasn't a nursing home, it was a community. It had gardens, a library, and a dining hall that looked like a restaurant. I had already signed the papers. I had paid for 5 years in advance. When we walked into the lobby, the staff was waiting. They didn't look at her dirty coat. They looked at her like a guest. "Welcome home, Mrs. Evelyn," the director said. We took her to her room. It was on the first floor, with a patio that opened out to the rose garden. It had a real bed with a thick quilt. It had a private bathroom with a walk-in shower. It had a heater that worked. Mrs. Evelyn stood in the middle of the room. She touched the curtains. She touched the clean sheets. She turned to me. Tears were streaming down her face, cutting paths through the grime on her cheeks. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for an old woman? Because you saw me, I said. When everyone else looked away, you saw me. You saved my life. I hugged her. She smelled like rain and old wool, but she felt like safety. You're safe now, I told her. No more cold, no more fear. Next was Lauren. Lauren had risked her safety for me. She had let me sleep on her couch. She had driven the getaway car. I bought a house. It wasn't huge. It was a 3-bedroom Craftsman in the historic district. It had a big porch and a swing. It had a kitchen that was always going to be full of food, never empty. I gave Lauren a key. Move in, I said. Rent-free. For as long as you want. She screamed and jumped on me. We laughed until we cried. But I did one more thing. I knew Lauren was struggling to pay for college. She was working 2 waitress jobs just to afford tuition at Wichita State. I set up a meeting with the dean. I established the Harper Scholarship. The first recipient was Lauren Evans. Full ride, tuition, books, everything. When I told her, she sat on the floor of our new empty living room and sobbed. You don't have to carry trays anymore, I said. Just study, be the lawyer you want to be. 6 months later. It was a Tuesday, my birthday again. I turned 19. I woke up in my own bed. The sun was streaming through the window. It wasn't cold. The heater was humming softly. I could smell coffee brewing in the kitchen. Lauren was already up. I walked out to the porch with my mug. The morning air was cool, but it felt fresh, not dangerous. I thought about where I was a year ago. I thought about the cake, the shouting, the backpack, the fear. I had scars. I still had nightmares sometimes about fire. I still checked the locks on the doors 3 times before bed. Trauma doesn't just vanish because you have money. It takes time. But I wasn't a victim anymore. I drove to the prison that afternoon. I didn't go inside. I didn't want to see Kimberly. I didn't need to hear her voice. I just stood in the visitor parking lot. I looked at the tall fences and the razor wire. I knew she was in there. I knew she was waking up in a cage every day, thinking about the millions she lost, thinking about the lie she lived. I spoke out loud, even though she couldn't hear me. You wanted to take everything, I said to the wind. You wanted to erase me. The wind blew my hair back. But you lost, I said. You lost because you didn't understand love. You only understood greed, and greed leaves you empty. I turned around. I saw the gate opening. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I was just leaving. I got back in my car. I checked my phone. I had a text from Mrs. Evelyn. They are serving pot roast tonight. Come visit. I had a text from Lauren. Happy birthday. Cake is in the fridge. Don't peek. I smiled. I didn't have parents. I didn't have a brother. But I had a family. I had the woman who watched over me in the dark. I had the friend who drove me to safety. I started the car. I put it in drive. I drove away from the prison, away from the past, and back toward the city. The sun was setting, painting the Kansas sky in brilliant purples and oranges. It was beautiful. I was Marley Quinn Harper. I was 19. I was a survivor. And finally, for the first time in my life, I was home.